now is that the pipeline crews gave us the impression that we were making sustainable revenue, and they've been gone for almost a year. Now we know we have a problem out there. Adult Center, very good subject for everyone. At one time, was an attendant to minor activities and keep area clean. Because we had more money, there are only one of 4 sections that have any HVAC service. Fitness room is embarrassing, it has no HVAC. Pool and activity room has no HVAC. Center needs to be monitored and cleaned up. Don't have any money. Adult Center basement also has asbestos that needs to be abated and closed off to all access. Teen Center hadn't been open for consistently over a year and a half. Partly because of COVID, partly because of no money. Creekside restaurant has been closed for, I don't really know how long it's been closed. I've heard different stories. But the equipment was left in such a bad state that when volunteers helped clean it up last year, we even found a dead rat in the bottom of the fryer and a year-old, how many year-old oil, I don't know. Closed because of no money. Coolers did not work, plumbing bad, fryer, well, you know, and no range. Under counter, ice machine not working, beer box not working, has been replaced. HVAC system consists of 3 window air conditioners, 2 of which did not work. Central air system has been out for, I really have no idea how many years. No money or repair to replace. There are 3 systems out there that don't work. Dickman Hall. Bar was closed but has been repaired and reopened. Of the 6 HVAC units in Dickman Hall, only 1 is operable. Flooring is main restaurant portion is water damage. Tile flooring that was installed cannot be used in the kitchen. Walk-in cooler, which we need for beer storage, does not work. Walk-in freezer does not work. There is no operating kitchen equipment in the kitchen. Plumbing is questionable, as are the electrical wiring. Although I do think wiring is up to date. One other thing about the Adult Center, it has to be completely rewired. There's absolutely no doubt that that's wiring that goes back before the 70s. We're talking probably in the 40s or 50s. Golf course is an amenity and has to be kept up. 4 or 5 years ago, less than 30% of the irrigation system worked. Now, approximately 70 to 80% of the course has irrigation. Unfortunately, we put a lot of grass out there in areas that didn't have irrigation. So that's why you had the dead area and probably in one of the most visible areas of the fort. This is a signature item for a resort that has to be kept up so that the asset is not an eyesore. HVAC systems in both the green room are not operable, and we are now using window ACs. Office AC times work that is questionable. Tennis courts. We have tennis courts at the Teen Center, golf course, par 3 course, none of which can be used. Fences are down, surface is graded, not an asset. Par 3 course. At one time, one of the first things that were seen when you came to Fort Park was a very impressive, at least green, par 3 course. Cannot afford to repair water irrigation or water course. I think this is a very good example of what happens when you say, save the money by cutting maintenance. I don't think it is helping the fort in any way. It is not considered an asset. Swim park and spring. The reason we are here, and that is the reason we are here, services were cut to the point that barbecue pits are missing, cracks in the pool almost led to catastrophic failure of wall, and still may be an issue in some areas. Rendezvous Park picnic tables are almost not usable. Pavilion almost falling down. Bathrooms are disgusting and barbecue pit needs repair. When I've been told, the lights around the pool have not worked for over 10 years, and no one has ever questioned why I haven't made an effort to repair. We repaired duck in and maintained minimal food service this year. Passed down to the park is a hazard. Trees were planted in areas that caused planters to crack and degrade. More needs to be done. Because of the Los Morris Committee, work has started to be done to return the pool to its original glory. This has been done at no expense to the fort, and I think that's probably one of the most important things we need to understand. Los Morris Creek, over the years, mostly pecan trees were either planted or were allowed to grow next to a retaining wall lining Los Morris Creek. For those that not know or do not observe, pecan tree roots crack masonry walls, and the walls along Los Morris Creek have fallen into the creek. These are examples of what you think you're saving money. Revenue generating areas of the fort depend on curb appeal and good condition for a complete Fort Clark Springs package. We have been lucky because a couple of years pipeline money allowed everyone to think that we had a product that was appealing to people and they wanted to come here and stay and allow their money to float HOA's budget. Now we have a border crisis and it looks like we have a positive cash flow again for probably another 6 months. Thank you, Joe Biden. Don't let you think it will last. If we do not address, didn't think I was going to thank you for anything, did you? Don't let that thing go last. It will not address these areas. The fort is only dying a slow death. Thank you. Sorry I got on my soapbox.
So, thank you for putting that all together and the work that you've done with your staff to unwind what has been here before. So, the first document that Mr. Peterson was reading from is this simple form document. We did not pass this out because I wanted everyone to listen to what Mr. Peterson was saying, but we will send this document out so that everyone can review at some point here in the next week. So the way that this document is broken down, it's very clear that without the income centers of your inn, your RV park, your golf course, and your hunt, we're at a $360,000 deficit. So the moniker that we're subsidizing the golf course with the HOA, we're not, because we're not even covering our cost of the HOA with the HOA. So you can't subsidize from a bucket that's empty. So yes, the golf course is pulling dollars from other revenue producing items, but currently we run the risk. If we were to have, everyone knows that things happen all at once. So this week, we had a supply pipe bust in the motel. If that were to be a larger item that wasn't caught quickly and taken care of, you could wipe out an entire building for a month of a revenue stream, or maybe even longer, depending on how bad it was. We all know what pipes leaking can do. We all saw that here in the last year. RV park, you've got the, you could have a situation where people aren't traveling again, COVID, we lose the pipeline, or something like that. All of these things have their own inherent risk that they can go away. If that were to happen, we're at a $360,000 deficit for an HOA to stand on its own. That also means that none of the money produced by these assets are going back into the assets. So where they are right now, if we don't change, will be where they are next year and the year after. And that's not even true, because if we continue to run them like this, they're only going to degrade if we don't reinvest into them. So currently, with a $360,000 deficit as an HOA, we've got to find ways to make that different. One of those ways is looking at CPI, which we'll be discussing later, but we must realize and we must identify and look at your support for the HOA is coming from your revenue producing assets. And if you go back and you take the HOA income and expenses, and you take 20% of that and associate it with the barracks and the RV park, the hunt, and the golf course, 20% of that. So we're going to take 20% of those costs and move them over to those revenue producing assets and say, well, if someone goes to the front gate or has an issue, security is taking care of an RV park guest or a motel guest. Well, that's fine. So we're going to take 20%, we're going to allocate it to that. You're still at a $153,000 loss as an HOA. That's a big number and a very scary proposition when we have things. The last 2 years, I believe we've had anthrax in Kenny County. Hasn't hit our deer population, but it's in the cards and it's coming. So 1 year we may not have a hunt to help us stand up. We may have issues with a revenue producing RV park or hotel. We've got to start playing so that this HOA can stand on its own, or we risk being in a very dire situation and start doing things out of desperation. There was just a 2-page document that was read after doing research in the last year and few months that Mr. Peterson has been here. And we can see the result of that, of acting out of desperation. We cannot do that any longer. So unfortunately, you know, this budget is better. You know, you've heard the numbers. We walked through it at a high level, the losses that have been taken over the years, whether it be on paper or not. The lowest number I heard was north of $100,000 in paper losses.
Paper losses, yeah.
So this budget accounts for $50,000. So you're moving in the right direction, and we'll continue to move in that direction as we go, and hopefully we can beat this budget. And it's our goal also to, on a monthly basis, report to you versus the budget, so that you know. Today, you hear me say where we're at. Next meeting, you'll know where we're at compared to what we identified for that month going forward.
There's one other area we have to address as far as our increases, and that's what our insurance has gone up. Because our insurance going in, I don't know, everybody knows it went up over $30,000 last year. Well, it's going to go up a lot more than that this year. So you're looking at just in the last couple of years, just in 3 years' time. And this is because of accidents, lawsuits, whatever you want to put it in. At one time, it was $164,000, between $180,000 and $170,000 pretty consistently. This next year, it's going to be over $290,000. And that's because of things that happen here, probably because of shortcuts. Yeah, and that's just something you have to look out for. Matt and I are working on a loss prevention program that will be inspecting every areas of the fort and start going in. But these are things that are going to affect our insurance for 5 years. This year our workers' comp actually went down because we've had no accidents, and we've done real well there. But our liability is up, and it won't even have an umbrella right now. So these are one areas that are going up, and that's not really much control we have over right now.
So I'll open it up to discussion on the budget, and then we'll move to member comments. So, do we have any discussion items on the budget from the board? Questions?
No, we were presented with a budget, and I don't really have any problems with it because the people who prepared it know where our expenses are, know where our revenue is, and that doesn't change. So this budget was based on past histories.
It will be much more accurate than last year's.
So, yeah, I have no problem with it.
My only comment is very sobering. I think it's very sobering. We have to consider our options.
Okay. I'll open it up to member comment.
Hi, Jim Reyes. We've been here 2.5 years, and I have to say the current management is doing an excellent job. The board's doing a great job. When you started, I asked you for a capital improvement wish list. And you just crossed your eyes and looked at me, and now we have it.
Yeah.
We have an assessment, we have a restricted fund, and one thing we don't have there, associated that it was a capital improvement fund. And I think if we had a capital improvement fund and that money was used, once you take the wish list, we prioritize the wish list, and the capital improvement money is used to address all those issues that we've got. I took a quick look at the accounting records and the systems, and I've been a CFO of a corporation. I've never seen such a mess in my life, and the gross incompetence that was shown just bogged my mind. But members of the fort were willing to accept that as their financial reporting by looking at what Alan's doing right now with all the new software you've implemented, 4 new software installations simultaneously. I think you're nuts, but
Yep, I agree.
I think it'll work out in the long. I think it's going great. What I do want is accountability for where the money's gonna go, and the board members to be held, and management held responsible for making sure the money doesn't roll off on other projects that aren't on the capital improvement list.
Yeah, the capital improvement list, I didn't set up for this. I'll probably have it ready in about a month or two. So really have to look at, but this is pretty much extremely extensively an operations budget. But there are a lot of, we've got a lot of areas that we look at. We have to look at our account and the other areas, but we'll be able to address that in the next month.
Hi, Lisa Van. In the 5 years I've been here, this is the best explanation of our finances I've heard so far. You know, I feel like I've driven around the court for 5 years, and you complain about the condition of this, the condition of that, and I'll have to disagree with Jim, because we haven't accepted our P&Ls. We've been fighting to get better P&Ls, to get a better budget, and now I'm finally seeing it. I'm disheartened, you know it's bad, but to hear it out loud is really bad. And I don't know.
Sorry, don't shoot the messenger.
I mean, you see it every day, but it's really easy to turn a blind eye, or that'll get fixed down the road, or is that ever going to happen? And maybe the rest that I would say will come under the CPI, because obviously an assessment raise is coming in a couple minutes.
A discussion of an assessment raise is coming in a couple of minutes.
Okay, a discussion. So I'll leave the rest until that happens. But thank you, all of you, for how much work and how much time you went into all of that.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do we have a motion to approve the budget?
I make a motion. Go ahead, Robert.
You're up, Mr. Money.
I move that we accept the 21-22 budget as presented by the executive officer.
Second.
All in favor? All right, we will now move on to the CPI adjustments to assessments. So this format has been followed, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've seen back is to 2013. This format's been followed. So maybe it was followed before that, but we have a pretty nice document that goes through, and I'll start out by just reading the regular assessment language from the declaration. So Declaration on Prospective Covenants, Part 5, Assessments, Section 2A, Regular Assessments, and Section 2B, Improved Residential Assessments, filed March 28, 2017, Kenny County, Texas. So the paragraph that's listed there reads as such. Regular assessment. There shall be levied a regular assessment which, except on the affirmative vote of the majority of the property owners' votes cast in an election called for such purpose, shall be tied to the Consumer Price Index, or CPI. The regular assessment shall be assessed to members, family recreation members, and charter members, and be tied to the Consumer Price Index. Further provided that without such vote, the eligible membership, the board may from time to time increase the annual regular assessment no more than 2.5%, or in an amount equal to the rise in the CPI. U.S. city average 1967 equals 100. So basically what that means is year zero is 1967. Those stats are, so I won't get too deep into this, but this is another example where the declaration puts in a number. The CPI stats 0 is now the time frame from 1982 to 1984. So that is now year 0. So that moves it from 1967 to 1982 to 84. In that time, from 1982 to 84 to June of 2021, the price index is 271,696. So that means you've had a 171% increase since that time. So I'll go back to the end of this. Published by the U.S. Department of Labor statistics. So that means that your board can consider a increase of 2.5% unless the CPI year to year is more than 2.5%. And then the assessment increase, if accepted, can be up to the CPI for that time period. And the time frame that's used is June to June. So the reason we use June is you use June, it comes out, it's published by the government, and then once it's published, it's calculated, and so this is kind of the time frame. So we use June each and every year, so it should be consistent. The calculation comes out to a 5.4% increase this year. That's large. It's larger than I can remember in a long time. So 5.4% is significant. With the way that calculation works out, there would be a $2+ increase in that in the assessment.
221.
Yeah, the actual number is 2.21, so it's 221. That's larger than we've seen in the past. So, and I know that that's significant when you start to look at cost and how things are loaded. So, with that information, I will open it up to discussion for the board.
That would be,
Yes, sir.
Go ahead and tell them what the total amount, if it were approved, what the total increase in revenue would be, please.
221.
The total annual increase for all memberships, and I'll go through this as well. Lot owner and charter members, we currently would increase the revenue there $44,520. The residential piece, which is 841 residential memberships, would be $20,184, and the FRM increase would be $3,624 for a total of $68,328. So where we go back, and this is why it's important to do these in order. We talked about the budget, where we were at. Look at the HOA, $360,000. The deficit is $360,000. If you were to then increase this, you're taking $68,000, so that pushes that number down quite a bit. However, that still leaves us with a deficit. But that is why this is so important to understand and to be broken out in the fashion that Mr. Peterson has looked at breaking out, so that we can actually see, is this necessary, is this not necessary? It's, and I won't get too deep into my opinion until everyone has an opportunity to speak, but the numbers are there. And so that's what we're here to do, is put them in front of you. We're proposing at this point a $68,000 increase. That's what the maximum that we're allowed. And I believe actually that this can be adjusted just by a tad bit, because these numbers are associated with a $2 increase. We did a little research into the reason that your numbers are always whole. I have not found any reason as to why we can't use the full 2.21%. We'll ask that as we go here. Maybe there's someone else that can clarify that. But the reason that I would suggest a 2.21 versus a $2 increase is the same way that you talk about your compounding interest being your friend as you're moving up in age and you've been putting dollars away. It's the same for us. You knock off 21 cents this year, let's say that you do an increase next year, well, you're 21 cents behind on whatever percentage increase that you do next year. So you've got to have the 21 cents. And we start to look at these little things, and you start to go back and figure out, if you drop off 25 cents 4 years in a row, you've dropped off $1, which then you go back to start calculating it, it starts to add up over your memberships. When you're multiplying times 2,000 memberships, and you're talking about dropping a quarter off, that's a lot. So.
The other aspect of this is, Travis, tell me the number. We have lost how many members?
So, I'm going from memory here.
About 200?
Yes, we're
I think you said 1,700 or
yeah,
1,400.
right. So in 2000, somewhere in the 2013, 2015 range, we were running north of 2,200 members. Excuse me, north of 2,000 members, and we're now down to, call it, just under 1,800 members. So not only do you have a cost increase as to what we're incurring as an HOA and operations budget, but you're also decreasing the number of people that are paying into that. So your pool is becoming smaller and your costs are going up. So this becomes just a compounding effect that hurts us in the long run.
Were those all paying members or just people who were on the rolls?
They were assessed.
They were assessed.
Were they paying?
Correct. Well, so that's where it's very, yeah. And so take that with, and I understand exactly where you're going. The numbers, you know, if there's 200, right, the difference is 200. Let's say that, you know, 50 of them were paying. We'll leave 150 to bad debt. You're still talking about a significant dollar effect to the operational budget. So, yeah, I think that, and that's one of the things that we want to be more clear about going forward. Where are we at on delinquencies? What are we looking at? The numbers simply aren't there, and it's detrimental to our forward moving progress to go back and dive too deep into the history. We want to understand what the numbers are, the large buckets, but trying to figure out how much we paid for paper clips in 2013 in February just isn't a good use of our time.
You know, I did research one area, and I was looking at our rates that were in 1981, the heyday of what was going on here. And I adjusted the 1981 dollar to today's dollar and what we're paying to make the same amount according to just the increase in inflation. We'd be 25% higher than what you're paying now. That's just for inflation. And so we have not even come close to keeping up with inflation. So that's just, and 1981, we had a lot of people here that were paying, from what I understand. So there was a lot of revenue coming in here that was keeping the place up. And a lot of that's gone. We're not keeping up with the people, we're not keeping up with the revenue.
So to be clear, with a 5.4% increase in CPI, owners, charter members, and FRMs would go from $41, and that would increase $2.21, so $2.21. Residential would increase $2.16. That rate is currently $40. So, we've heard some explanations. If there are any comments from the board, questions? Again, I'll open this up.
Just one question you just said. You said residential would be 216?
That's correct.
So you're adjusting, they're not going to all be 221 then?
So it's higher than, I thought it was 421 too.
So
216 plus
221 and 216, those are the two. I was incorrect when I stated that both would go up by 221. Owner, charter, FRM is 221, residential is 216. That simply comes from multiplying 5.4% versus your $41, and then also your $40 for residential.
And FRMs would be,
total.
oh, okay, never mind, I see it.
The total increase would be 437.
Yeah, I know.
That only comes out to $81. And for
But we're subtracting the $4 that goes to preservation prior to. I got to give you something, right? I can't take it. I mean, if you want, if you're proposing that we do it on the extra $4 as well, by all means, then the mic is here, so, we're not gonna change everything overnight, you know, but we do need to make some strides in what we're doing.
For clarity purposes, we're in debt $359,000.
You-
And the increase in revenue is gonna be $68,000 approximately,
Correct.
correct? Okay. So then that leaves us still short $291,026. Where we're gonna make that up?
Well, those dollars are coming from your barracks and your RV, golf and hunt.
If that stays stable.
If those stay stable, yes.
Thank you.
So here is another example. I'm glad you got to that. While our declaration is here to protect us as members, it does have limiting factors. And if we do not take action, that's gone. It's over. You cannot relive that day. So any year that we didn't do an increase, any year that we didn't take the full increase, that's why you're at a number that we're still going to have a deficit. And we're going to have to fight, claw, you know, as long as we can to get back to a number where we're covering the HOA. We're not doing it today. And that's why changes to the declaration, understanding the declaration, are so important. We can find ourselves in a position where we simply cannot act. In order to do an assessment higher than what it is right now, this would have to go to the membership. If it goes to the membership, you would have to receive back an affirmative vote from 66.7% of the membership. An affirmative vote from 66.7% of the membership. You don't even have 66.7% of the votes returned, much less affirmative votes. So we're really limited on the action that we can take. So just to really lay out where we're at and the limited action that we can take.
At this point.
At this point.
Well, I think you also need to, if everybody's dealt with HOAs before, you have to have adequate reserves. And we don't. I mean, we have to, if we have an excess, it needs to be developing a reserve fund for the court. Because I think people do understand we need roads fixed, stuff like that. There are a lot of things that we need to start building up a reserve.
Another thing for clarification, this year, we're not gonna have a special assessment.
There's no proposed special assessment.
No.
Don't say we're not. There is none proposed as of yet. You know, things happen.
No, I'm talking about the annual one that we've been having for the last 20 years for taxes. There will not be a special assessment.
The golf course or whatever you want to play.
Well, every year's been for tax.
So what
That's the good news.
what Director Guzman is referring to is the assessment that has been levied, you know, based on the property taxes. We could have a philosophical conversation as to what those are really for, but I'll leave that for tonight with everyone over at Dickman Hall. So, everyone should be going to Dickman Hall after hearing these numbers. We got to get cash in this.
Got the keys.
So there will not
Open
be,
early.
there might be an increase, but there's not gonna be a special assessment this year.
There will not be a special assessment for property taxes. Those are covered in the budget, in the deficit that you see. You know, are there situations that could cause us to have to do an assessment at some point? Absolutely. I mean, if something falls down, or the gate falls. What's up?
After George Bush said no new taxes, we know better than to say never.
Yes. Yes.
It's true.
So,
Yeah.
and you know, last year when we had this discussion with the previous board, Dustin hit the nail on the head. Nobody likes to raise assessments, especially board members, because we have to pay those assessments too. You know, we're members just like everyone else, and I bought property down at Fort Clark because I could retire as a teacher there. Every time I raise the assessments as a board member, I'm chipping away at my future retirement income. But you can't have an association if it's bankrupt and there's nothing to live there anymore, because it's all gone. So I am going to support the increase. I think that the round numbers are easier though, Travis. That might be why they kept it. I understand the whole quarter argument, but for me getting older and chemo brain and stuff, the round numbers are easier to keep up with writing a check.
Understood.
Well, you could always pay it, you know, round up. And just pay a little bit more, you know. You know, we'll take it if you want to we'll go to 2 1/4 or something, you know.
Oh, three.
I believe we had a comment from the.
Well, I understand the need to maintain, to get rid of this deficit. What I have an issue with is the fact that we're going to end up, if we continue on this road, you're going to end up forcing people like myself who are living solely on Social Security out the door. Because Social Security is not going up like what you're raising. And I understand the need for money, but I just want you to know that there are those of us, and I don't know how many there are, but myself, I moved here because I could live on Social Security alone. And that's my fault for not planning ahead, not being educated enough to understand that I needed to invest my money when I was younger. That's on me. But so now, all I have is Social Security. And as prices continue to go up, I'm going to be forced to sell my home and go live with my daughters or somewhere else. So, but I understand the need to get rid of a deficit. But you just need to be aware that you are affecting people on fixed incomes.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your comments. You know, we've been up here and we've been able to, in this topic, at least have a few laughs, but I think it goes back to very much what Director O'Brien said is we take this very seriously, and this is not something that we, you know, want to do, and we certainly do not want to push people out of their homes. The situation that we're facing is that if we continue to run in this fashion, the fort will be pushed out, and that's the sobering idea here. And it's not something that any of us take lightly. I don't think anyone that's here takes it lightly, or you wouldn't be here. And again, I do appreciate everyone coming and being here to talk about this and participate in what we're doing, because it does matter.
And I understand that, and I'm not saying it's going to push me away tomorrow, okay? But as the years go on, God willing, I live for another 20 years, there'll become a point where I may have to leave.
Yes, sir. And that's one of the reasons that I believe in the transparency that we're producing here, it's necessary. Because I'm hoping that before that point comes, you can see that there's not a deficit anymore, and you can have some surety in the sense that you can plan based on, okay, well, if there's still a deficit here, I know that increases are still coming, or that increases will be X because we're still at this deficit.
Yeah.
And so that is what we as a board owe to the membership. We owe you the opportunity to be informed about the decisions that you have to make based on where we sit as an association. And that is our commitment. One, you have my personal commitment that we're going to do what we can to push these numbers down as far as budget and use other income sources, but also, and more importantly, that you will understand exactly where the dollars are and how far behind we are, because you have to know that information in order to make a plan and not come into a situation where today you're here and tomorrow you got to be somewhere else, or you got to make a decision that you don't want to make today. Maybe you want to make it in 5 years or 7 years or 20 years, right? But you don't have to make that decision today. That is the commitment that I'll make to you. And we'll continue to do these reports this way so you can understand what's going on.
Very good.
Say, Travis,
Yes, sir.
The number of people that live here that refuse to pay assessments, is that number going up or down?
It is going down significantly. So earlier this year, we have done two things. So we worked with an attorney to put in a collection process that directly follows the law and has been implemented by Mr. Peterson, where at this date we do this, at this date we do this. Go on and we continue to go. So delinquency notes at this point, when we put people on either payment plans or start calling them to get collections in, I believe the number that we heard earlier was between 5 and 6% delinquency. That's down significantly over time. And so we have a person dedicated to that process.
That's down from 10%.
Yeah, if not more than, 10% plus. So that number, we're closing that gap significantly. And what we have found is that a majority of the people that become delinquent are willing to work to get that number down and paid for and back on track. So we have seen a significant change in the appetite to remain current from the membership. And I thank Renee and Mr. Peterson for following this process, because that's the whole reason that we're doing that's happening.
Mr. Giblin, we've also had we've already foreclosed on some properties as well.
That's the other thing that the attorney worked up for us is the proper foreclosure process. When people do become delinquent beyond, at some point, the property taxes, because if you're not paying your assessments, you're also not paying other things as well. So at some point, the properties become into a situation where it makes no sense to go back and pay the property taxes. Everyone's just going to walk away, and that's where we get the biggest issues, because that becomes an expense for us, because now we've got to go in. We have, 7 lots right now that we need to go in and remove the structures. We own the lots now. They've been returned to us. Well, thank you for the early Christmas present, but now we got to do something with them, right? And we're also developing a plan, which we'll be speaking about today in executive session, and hopefully able to roll out to the membership on just what to do with those types of situations, so that when we get in these situations where we do get a give back, or we get something that we can get off the courthouse steps and we can return to service and return to revenue producing, or that we have a boilerplate action item, so that anyone that steps into this position, anyone that steps into the personnel of the fort can say, oh wait, we have someone who's delinquent at this point. All right, we know what to do. Go to that file, start this process. Here's the process, and then it returns back to the fort, and hopefully in short order is back into a revenue producing item for the fort in this form of assessments, also for the county in the form of property taxes that will be paid and hopefully improved upon.
Speaking about lots, I don't think the price of vacant lots right now for sale with the fort owns. I've been here 11 years, and I don't think the price on those has gone up at all.
They haven't, and we're basically putting a hold on sales for our own lots, because we're going to go ahead and just really look into what we should be selling them for. Because they're underpriced for what we're selling.
When I tell people the price, they don't believe it.
No. So we have, I think, around 150 lots that we own in and around there are doable. But we need to really look at the price that we're working on those.
And there's also some consideration to the way that this development was put together. In there's an option to move, to do that based on when and how the memberships were bought. So that's something that we have to consider. That's another one of those bounds by the dedicatory instruments that we've got to work through and understand at this point. So that will be another piece that we'll have to work through over time. Yeah.
And there's another.
I don't want to say the phrase.
I don't know how much you want to divulge, but you guys have got this plan where we'll start.
That's executive session.
Yeah, that's the plan that we hope to roll out here coming soon,
Okay.
where we'll work through just how we're going to put lots that have been returned to the fort in whatever fashion back into service, back into producing revenue, back into being a place that you want to drive past and live next to. So we hope to roll that out very soon.
We also have to, Mr. Peterson's got plans about, more beautifying of the fort for different reasons, more amenities if there's a possibility on that, to encourage people to move here, which would increase our membership numbers, obviously increase our monies. So, you know, that's all part of the plan.
I don't want to overstate it, but I do appreciate the real conversation that's being had. As somebody, and I'm sure there's a lot, you know, every time we hear we're raising your assessments, we have these things that have to be done, but it never feels like it comes to fruition. Now, and I'm not saying that now, because I do feel like we're actually getting somewhere. But, you know, in this budget you have that's coming up, is in this budget things to work on the pool and things to, or is there nothing in the budget until we get more money?
For the pool?
The pool or any
A lot
improvements?
of that will be capital improvements, and we haven't done a capital budget yet. We will keep the existing preventive maintenance we're doing on the pool will keep up. So we're gonna make some improvements there. I did put some areas in the budget for admin and the pool and some of the other areas to do a little bit more repair work that will be expensed, like bathrooms at work, bathrooms in Dickman Hall that will work, things like that. So we'll upgrade those, and those will be expensed, so it is in the budget.
Okay, because, you know, it's kind of circular. We want to boost, like, I don't know if that number of what's gone down for members includes FRMs, but if I were just having an FRM, I wouldn't want to pay that amount per month just to go to the pool. I mean, because basically, you know, there isn't tennis courts,
Your FRM members are majority RV park members, and some pool families, as well as golf memberships.
I believe you also have a significant amount of hunters that maintain.
That come in.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing we're adjusting our rates at the RV park for the FRMs, because we're actually losing money by allowing them such a big discount to be a member, and that's going to change.
And I think that there's a few things, and maybe this is the wrong time to highlight them, but I want to make it very clear that we're not just focusing on the membership. You know, that's not the thing that we're doing, and I know that a lot of people understand that, but I want to highlight, you know, what Mr. Peterson just said. You know, taking a look at how the FRM and the membership discount affects the rates that people are using and how it's being used. I think another program that was implemented shortly after you came, you know, we had members that would get an FRM for pool season and then drop the FRM afterwards. So there were loopholes in what we were doing, and so that was also prevalent with the hunt. So now Mr. Peterson has worked with his personnel to say, okay, if you have an FRM and you drop your FRM, you then have to catch up in that period. You can't just, you know, maintain it during the season that you want, or when you're here for 2 months or whatever the case may be, and then drop it. So there's all these little stops that are there, and these little pitfalls that, you know, if you give someone a system long enough, they're going to figure out exactly where the holes are. And so we're also running behind trying to close those holes. Another a deal that was started prior to this new seating of the board that was done at the annual meeting, the board prior had started reviewing softwares that would then, you know, that were brought by Mr. Peterson to look at revenue generation on our assets, such as the RV park and the hotel. You know, the person that comes in and rents the first room on, you know, July 2nd, you know, pays the rate, but then, you know, when you start looking in other places, as that motel starts to fill up, as that residence starts to fill up, those rates start to go up. We've never had that possibility. We've never had that place that, and those little things are where you get to, all right, now we've got extra dollars to do capital improvements on this asset. It's all there. So I want everyone to understand that all of these little things are being done in every revenue center to produce. It's not just that we're coming to the membership and saying we need more. We're making every effort to make sure that dollars are coming from every source as efficiently and effectively as possible. And that will continue to be what we do to make sure that every dollar is coming in that we can possibly bring in.
The clubs are paying to rent buildings now for functions that they like to make money on, and that's great, but we need to be making money on the function.
Yeah, we've got to cover, you know, some the cost for the buildings, for the administration of that, the wear and tear, the electricity, all that. So those are things that, you know, we're looking at on every level. I believe now that, you know, in year 2, there will be a greater understanding of what we can look at to cover costs and things. Right, and renegotiate some of the deals. And so, you know, that's where we're at. And, you know, I hope everyone can keep that in mind. But
I guess the one thing we've also done in the last year, Julie and the county, we actually know all the contracts and stuff that we have out there. I think every month I was coming up with a new one. I'm going, where did this one come from? And so there are probably 50 contracts and agreements done with this board. So we have all that documented now.
So any further comments from the membership? Okay. Just before we start back here, I'll read the, thank you. So the proposed increase for owner, charter members, and FRMs based on the CPI is 2.21 cents. The residential is 2.16 cents. It's per month, and that will be north of $70,000 on there. So those are the numbers. We don't have a motion as of yet.
I would like to move that we accept the assessment increase based on the CPI at $2.21 for owners, charters, and FRM, and $2.16 for residential members.
Second.
Residential membership.
Good.
I second that.
All in favor? Motion passes. Okay. Property insurance. So this is the item that's budgeted at $290,000 because we still have some unknown costs as far as our umbrella going
The
forward.
reason I put it at 290, although it says 260 on the proposal, is because the umbrella policy is only a rider for 2 months. So the other 10 months is on their proposal yet until they find an umbrella policy. So I estimated just that much of an increase. Maybe less, maybe more. We have one lawsuit that's outstanding. That's sort of one of those things that's holding over us right now.
So this line item is in the budget that was approved at a number of $290,000. Just for clarity. Do we have any discussion?
I think it's important that we clarify for everybody that this isn't just a property insurance. This is general liability that covers a broad range of things. And what makes this policy go up is when there's frivolous lawsuits. If a member falls down at the pool and says, oh, I'm going to try to make a couple of $1,000s, well, that increases all of our expenses here. If a board makes a poor decision and costs the association a legal settlement, that raises the liability coverage that covers board members. And this year we had a 53% increase on that line item because of some things that happened in the not too distant past. So I think it's important that people know this money is not just for property insurance, but it covers a wide variety of coverage, liability coverage.
Yeah, and I'm sure it probably went up because of the last 2 hailstorms we've had here and the damage that was done to the buildings.
Your insurance went up, and that's one of the areas of the umbrella, but your insurance went up, your liability and your umbrellas are going to be the two main issues that go up. And that's because of existing lawsuits.
For further clarification, it's my understanding that it continues to go up because of prior incidents, and we're not going to level off until we have less incidents. Is that correct?
Correct. We've had none in the last year.
So 3 or 4 years, it might go down, it just depends on
I don't know, maybe Sandy knows how long it takes for them to go off your record, but I have no idea.
And the reason he's asking me is that's my 38 years back on doing insurance. Yeah, it depends, it kind of depends on the kind of loss it is and the carrier. And I wanted to add this, is that we have an insurance broker that has worked with us for many, well, decades actually. And he is the one that has to go out and search various markets to get the best deal for us. And it's very difficult to insure this particular operation, this homeowners association, because of the type of setup we have here. So these losses, work comp's one thing. If you have a lot of, and work comp is part of this package, so it's called, by the way, a personal lines package because it covers both property, casualty, and workers' compensation. If you have a lot of small losses, it's going to cost you more than like one big one. But when it comes to liability insurance, if you have a great big one, it's going to cost you more than a lot of little bitty ones. So the tail on this particular loss is going to last as long as probably the claim does. In other words, once it's been settled and all the payments have been made, then it's going to come off the books, and then they'll start looking to re-rate the liability portion of their policy. Yeah. So while it's still there and the end result is unknown, then it's going to be considered every year when they underwrite the policy.
Okay.
Mr. Peterson, I know you and I spoke a little bit about this, but for the sake of additional information for the membership, we're going to pay a percentage of that liability insurance, and then we're going to finance that other percentage, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What were those numbers? More or less?
60,000 we pay up front, and they finance 201, something like that.
The credit rate is 6.15%.
Thus, we're going to pay interest on what we're borrowing to pay for the insurance.
It's typical for large policies.
Yes, yeah, that's pretty typical, and the actual 60,000 that is due is that actually is a down payment, and it is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it is scoped out over the monthly period, the term of the contract. Yes, I mean the $290,000 line item, I mean, would deplete our reserves to a point where it actually may deplete our reserves beyond what we're allowed to deplete them to. So I'm not even sure that it's an option other than to finance it.
It's basically putting you on a payment schedule.
Yeah. Any other questions or discussion items from the board? Questions or comments from the membership? Do we have a motion?
I move that we accept the general liability insurance policy as accepted or as presented.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. All right, the election committee. Election committee members 2022. These are people that have sent in their desire to be a member of the election committee. Ann Barron, Francis Bitter, Sandra Hagan, Ava Martinez, Barbara McFadden, and as an added surprise, we have enough people to actually have an alternate in the event that we have, so kudos, thank you. And Constance Kilgore will be the alternate, and I believe that the process will be that she'll be involved in everything.
Robert can give you more
Okay.
on that.
Okay.